Hey, guess what? I just recorded a video and there was some sound problem. And of course, I'm a new engineer, so when that happens, I have to re-record. So this video, it's made with a lot of love because I have to redo it. And it's for people that work with me or people that work with an engineer. And the beauty of doing a video a second time is that the second time you do things in a much more expeditive way because you sometimes talk too much. So I'll try to make it shorter and hopefully it will be working well. So the point of making this video is because I have people that work with me in mixing and mastering, and I often get the same kind of exchange, the same kind of debate with people, and I should make templates, honestly, but I hate doing templates because it feels really impersonal and impersonal, sorry. So I decided to record this video that will cover a few things. And it's probably going to be sounding kind of like common sense, but there's a lot of clients sometimes that are, because it's their music and they feel very close to their music, when they leave it in the hands of someone like me or another engineer, they feel like, okay, they need a lot of control over it. So the point one is how to pick your engineer. This is something I covered in my blog, but I will cover it for you in video because you picked me, or maybe you pick someone else. But whoever you pick that person because you like how they mix. You like how the work they do sound. You don't pick that guy because he's cheap. You don't pick that guy because you think he's going to do a good job on what you do. You really need to pick the guy because you like how and what they do sound. Music is very arbitrary, and there's a lot of points that are technical and factual, but there's a lot of decisions that are made based on preferences. And this is the case of mixing. Mixing in a true neutral, like no influence way is almost impossible. And actually, you don't want that because that would sound very impersonal. And when you make and you do mixing and mastering, one of the things that I teach people that I train for that is you need to develop a skill for loving what you work on. So even the worst music that is being thrown at you, you have to trick your brain that you love that song. And then once you love that song, you try to make the most out of it. But this is going to be influenced by what you listen when you work on and what was your current influences in mixing and mastering. Like my tastes in mixing and mastering have been the same for the last 20 years. But sometimes there's like moments where there's certain areas and frequencies that I love, and I notice that for mixing and mastering, I will be putting a bit more effort there. And between old and new masterings that I do, sometimes there will be a difference. So anyway, when you pick your engineer, it's important you have a dialogue on what you and that engineer like. If you have no tastes that are similar, it's going to be a very hard process. So imagine you go to the restaurant and you pick that restaurant because you love the pizza. Well, the chef maybe has in mind like his role model for pizza and you have yours. And when you go to a restaurant, you want to remain open to what the chef is going to propose you, but it's possible that you've been in Italy and that chef never been there, or New York, and they don't have the same reference on what a good pizza is. Then it might be a shock for you to not receive a pizza like your standards are. Or maybe you've always loved the gross, greasy pizza from the local restaurants, and then you go to a fine dining pizza on wood stove, and you realize like, wow, okay, that's actually how it's supposed to be like. Then it's a total different experience. So it's the same thing for your music. Your music is something that doesn't exist when you start working with the person. It exists in a very kind of like sketch way or just like beginning of it, but it's not done. And a lot of the critical decisions of mixing are made based on what are the what is the best outcome possible for this song. So when I mix and when I do mastering, I think in a global sense of things. I think of who is it supposed to be playing for? What is the context? Who is going to enjoy this the most? For instance, if I make a mix for rock, I'm gonna listen to some rock and I'm gonna ask some rock references, and we're gonna listen to that together, and then we're gonna decide, okay, this song is we love like the tone of it and how it sounds globally, so we're gonna go into that direction for your song. It's the same thing for techno, house, hip hop, pop, and so it's difficult and really hard to try to take an engineer to do something that he thinks sounds bad. If the engineer is like being told, do this, do that, do this, do that, and is not heard for what he thinks are the best decisions, maybe you're missing out on what's the best potential for your song. So ask why. Why is a clap mixed this way? Why is the clap mixed at that level? Why is it more frontal? Why is it not pan like you panned it? Like why do these decisions are made? There's a reason for every decisions that we take. And the more you communicate with me on the decisions that need to be done for your song, the more we're going to go in the direction of finding what is the integrity of your song. What is the best way to make your song shine? Because that's what I have in mind, is just to give the best of life possible for your song. Which brings me to point number 2, which is references. You might love a specific song, but that song, unless it's a cover of yours and you're making a cover of that song, I mean, it won't be possible to sound exactly like it. You would need the same samples, you would need like the same kind of like context of production to be able to sound exactly like that. And sometimes working with a reference is counterintuitive. When I work with a reference, I work in a modular way. So I will pay attention to each element individually, and I will try to do like, okay, the bass is mixed that way, then I'm going to try to make the bass that way for the track I'm working on. And the vocals and the kick and the clap and the percussion and the ambience and the pads, everything is kind of analyzed. I can't reproduce sometimes what you have in the reference, because if I do the same thing on your track, it sounds terrible. I remember one time I really loved a haircut, and I had the picture of the perfect haircut I wanted. And I went to see the hairdresser and I said, I want that haircut. And they said, well, it's impossible. I'm like, yeah, I have hair. You can do that. They were like, no, but your hair, look, your hair in this way goes this way. You have a colic here. You have another colic there. Your hair is like that kind of thickness. It's like, doesn't fall like this. There's tons of reason. In the end, we went for something close, but it was nowhere close to the dream haircut that I wanted. And sometimes with music, it's the same thing. So when we work with a reference, I understand that you want to sound like that. We're going to try to have the same impact, but you also need to trust on the decision that I take. And the more you give me revision changes, the less I kind of know what I'm doing. And sometimes like people bring me to a point where things don't make any sense for me anymore. And I'm like, I feel like I mixed that, but it's not me. And I can't guarantee that it's going to have the same impact that it would have if I would mix it completely on my own. So the next point is feedback. So when you give feedback for a track that I work on, and you know, it's important that we say every decision has to be done in comparative to something. So when someone says it doesn't sound good, I'm like, compared to what? Doesn't sound loud enough. Compared to what? The kick doesn't punch enough. Compared to what? What are you comparing yourself with? That will dictate me like, okay, that's the punch you want, that's the kick you want, then I can address the problem. If we are just using your tastes or how it sounds in your studio, without any comparative, we're going in a no man's land. We won't know where we're heading. We need a comparison. And like whatever we do, and this is for production in general, we always want to have like a point of like, okay, if I sound like all these elements are there, then we know it's like a definition of done has been accomplished. So when you give feedback, it's not just about like what you didn't like in it, but you have to understand that when you tell me to lower down the clap, there's a cascade of other things happening behind that. Because when I mix the clap in a specific way, I want it to be interacting and relating to other elements around it. So if you're lowering that, I'm not just lowering the clap. Of course, I could just do that, but then some parts it's not going to work properly. So when you give feedback, I need to know what you like in the song. I get feedback from clients and emails, and it's just 2 lines: lower this, lower that. And I'm like, okay, I lowered this, lower that. And then they say, oh, now it doesn't work. You have to lower this. And here we go. The cascade of changes has just started. And then that can be like a rabbit hole. It's just like, now I just offer 2 revisions, and some engineers offer no revision because they don't like this rabbit hole. And we can go crazy doing that, because at some point you just like, some decisions are just pointless. No one will notice some stuff. It's about being functional. Does it work? That's the only thing that it like comes down to. And you hire an engineer to make sure that it works. What you think works or doesn't work might be true. In some cases, yeah, some clients are totally right, but there's nothing crazier to know as an engineer. Okay, I have to do it here because it's going to be working well like that. Client changes it. You're like, okay, whatever, roll eyes, send it. They test it in clubs. They come back. You were right. And that happens a lot. It's a waste of time for me, waste of time for the client. So please, I need to know when you have feedback of like what you like in this track. Because if we start the cascade of event and I start changing the parts that you liked in the song, then I mean, we're chasing our tail. Like, it's going to be like, so it's going to be a bit crazy. Next point is sample selection. Mixing is going to be much easier if you have the right samples. 2 things that make a huge difference in your mixing is A, the quality of the samples you use, and B, the number of samples you use. So the more you use sounds, the more complicated we are running into. Some of the most professional clients that I work with have barely any number. The number of channels is ridiculously low. And a lot of people that start making music have like 75 channels, 100 channels. And you don't always need a lot of channels. And the less you have, the more impact your song will have. And sometimes it's good to leave some sounds out because they won't do a change. So I would greatly encourage you that if you're starting with music, if you're not that great in mixing or okay at it, and you heard from someone, a YouTuber, a local DJ, a friend, that you need to do all the sound design yourself, please stop. Please stop. Just get a subscription to a service like Splice or Loop Cloud or whatever it is, and get quality samples. That's going to make things much easier. And anyone will tell you that a good quality song starts with what you start with. So if you love a pizza or if you love Italian cuisine, like, you know that some chef, they basically hunt down the best ingredients possible because they know that if the ingredient is savory and quality, they will have less preparation and they will have less seasoning to do, and things will be more pure to what the ingredients are tasting like. And it's kind of what we want with sounds. Like, you want sounds to be high quality because that's going to make it easier for the mixing. So some people are like, oh, but if I use samples, I'm not sounding like myself, which is bullshit, because when you take samples, this is a base, okay? Maybe the sample on its own is perfect, that is. You can use that. And, it's been 30 years, 40 years that people have been using 808, 909, and we still hear it, and it's fine. So all the possible like gear and synths and stuff has been sampled already. You don't need to buy an 808 to have an 808 kick. Just get good samples. It'll be the exact same thing as if you recorded from the 808 yourself. Maybe someone will do a better job than you. But samples is the base. After that, you can make them shorter. You can pitch it down, pitch it high, add transients, remove transients, add effect, and then you give personality of who you are with the samples you are. If that's not enough, we'll pick a bunch of samples and layer them all together to make a complete new sample, which will be yours, your creation. But, if you like think that you have to do everything yourself, it's gonna take you years before you sound right. And maybe this has been the problem for your production. And this is the problem from a lot of people that come to me. Their samples suck hard. And I have to give them like a reality check and be like, I have to remove that clap. I have to remove that sound. This sound is piercing. That sound is harsh. And if there's one thing that hasn't changed in my workflow of doing mixing, is to focus on one thing, to make music sound less harsh, sound more ear-pleasing. Unless that's not what the artist want, which sometimes happen, but most of the time that's all I'm focusing on. And 90% of the time it's poor sound design or poor sample selection. And when you use samples, high quality sample, you train your ears to recognize quality sample. And eventually, when you venture in the way of sound design, which is a world on its own, very complex, your ears will know when the sample is right. Just like people that do digging for songs, they know which song will work well on a dance floor. They can imagine it in their eyes. Same thing for me. When I hear a pad, I know exactly what it's going to sound like in a club, and I know if it's going to work or not. Or sometimes I'm wrong, but that's another story. Anyway, sample selection is key. Last point is loudness. That has been covered many, many times already on YouTube. Mr. Worrell is the best one at explaining sound loudness in music. But let's just summarize this to one thing, which is you don't need super loud music. I really understand that you want the listener to not feel like your song is less loud than the other one. You feel like your ego is hurt if that's the case. Honestly, when that happens for me in the car, I just raise the volume up. It's not a big deal. And the loudness ruins a lot of elements of your song, such as punch, clarity, and all the subtleties of spacing in your music. And, some people are like, yeah, but the DJs will have to play with the gain. Please, this is what we hire DJ for, is to do a track selection that is good and make people dance, but to know how to do gain staging. Gain staging means that in certain contexts, certain clubs, certain places, some songs will need some highs, some songs will need some lows. But it's not because for mixing with the previous song you needed to raise the low end that your song needs more low end. Because for some other songs, you will not need to boost it. For some, you will need to lower it. Certain clubs, it will be too boomy. Certain cars will be too much. Every context is different. And when I arrange the low end and the loudness, it's for, the average sound system. When people play in a specific club and it said, I had to boost it, I'm like, okay, but are you going to tell me to boost it or lower it depending of the each club that you played for. No, you want a song that is easy to work with in 99% of the contexts. And that means to do some compromises. Some compromises on how your tone of the track is, how certain elements are related to each other, and the loudness as well. If you trust the engineer for taking these decisions, yes, the DJ will have to adjust sometimes, but in other contexts, they won't have to do that. And if the DJ doesn't know how to adjust, well, they don't know what they're doing, and they need to step up their game and learn how to do it. We've been placing a lot of ways for everyone to be a DJ, but yet we need also to teach these people to do their job properly. And when you make a song, the most important point is that it's not faulty, it doesn't hurt the eyes, the level of the loudness is right for that genre, and that it's not too harsh. That's the only thing that really matters for a good master. The end is like some colors, there's like all these other things, but this is the base thing. And that's what I do when I work with people. I'm just making sure that we have a product that is viable and it's going to be usable in most contexts and please a lot of people as much as possible. So I hope this was useful. And if you have any comments, questions, and if you need to exchange with me, you can check in the comments below. And hopefully we work together. We'll continue working together, or maybe you will work with another qualified engineers that will be able to help you.